This is Dr. Pankaj Parikh from Raleigh, North Carolina. Starting the first of the series of discussion that we had planned um, from Hindu Society of North Carolina. Let me share my view screen so that you all can see. Um, the webinar series is called Know Your Roots and is, as I mentioned, sponsored by Hindu Society of North Carolina. The first webinar today is called Decasting the Caste System, an Indian Narrative. And the knowledgeable speakers here are Dr. D.K. Hemahari and Dr. D.K. Hari from India, from Chennai, India. This is their website, bharatgyan.com, and the Zoom link for this webinar is on that website also. You might have seen our prior flyer, and I appreciate Dr. Kishore Trivedi from Hindu Society of North Carolina to support this program. The website bharatgyan.com is quite exhaustive in understanding a variety of information about ancient India or the Indic civilization. You would be amazed to see the audio-visual contents as well as variety of digital and real books on this site there. And these are our guest speakers, Dr. and Mrs. Hari. Let me give a brief introduction for both of them so that we become familiar with them. Dr. and Mrs. Hari are contemporary, professional, multi-talented couple from Chennai, India, who have dedicated 25 years of their life for the purpose of Indian civilization knowledge studies and its dissemination for Indians and others globally. I have been amazed at the variety of areas that they have given their heart and mind, but their singular contribution, for which I feel they will be remembered for long, would be creating what is named as Bharat Gyan. They have deeply studied about 108 different subjects on aspects of the Indian civilization across the millennia to the present time with an eye on the future. This provides factual and authentic studies for people with little or a lot of interest in Indian civilization, and I feel that all of us belong to this category. While their website bharatgyan.com and YouTube contains a variety of easy to digest material, a much easier and surer way would be to find their books available on Amazon and other sites under the heading of Autobiography of India. From my personal experience, I tell you, you will not be disappointed. And interestingly, I noted that they have not been biased. They have kept their head very level-headed to assess the situation dispassionately, and that is hard to do for a staunch Indian. Again, their website is here to give you some feel with a variety of recorded audios, and they have been speaking all over the nation as well as the world. I came across them under the auspices of this organization called Hindu University of America, where they regularly do courses. And the course that I did with them was Hindu Contribution to the Realm of Mind. These are ongoing Zoom courses which you can take in the comfort from your home once a week, and they are recorded also. So in case if you need to go back, you can attend them later on in case if you miss it. Very interactive, short, and very easy to grasp the content. These are some of the books that I mentioned under Autobiography of India: Future from India, Roots in India, Made in India, Unique to India, and so on and so forth. There and mine contact information is here. Let me start the webinar asking a couple of questions to all of you, and I wish you all can think in your mind. You do not need to answer me at the moment, but while I'm speaking out loudly those questions, please reflect on those to get a feel about it. And whether the question is right or wrong, and that is what you are trying to formulate in your mind, that we have heard that the caste system is quite ancient and integral to Hinduism. Is that so? There were class wars or major conflicts in ancient India over the several millennia that we know of. Shudra, which are considered supposedly the lowest caste, were always poorer or inferior segments of the society. Brahmins were only temple priests. Again, yes or no, one Shudra forever Shudra. Is that real? All members of a family are of the same class. Another thing is, we might think over that West looked down upon Brahmins as bad. Is that so? And was there some hierarchy in the Western system in Europe and Islam? Did they have a so-called caste or hierarchy or untouchables? Many of you may know that the word caste comes from Portuguese Spanish roots called casta, meaning lineage, race, and breed. It's really a rigid social order and unyielding in a sense. And the word was introduced and the divisions were created probably to create divisions in the society, where we all know divide and rule was the primary emphasis. Was that like that before the so-called caste system was sort of solidified by Britishers? Was it like that? What did we know in India? How were the people sort of grouped separately and together? How did the whole society function? And that is where this term jati and varna come in picture. The word jati comes from root jay, jayati, one which is born. So the family that you are born in is called your jati. And that is not changeable. Once you are in that jati, like you are a goldsmith, you are a carpenter, you are born in that. So by birth, you may belong to that particular family or tradition or lineage. But while I may be born as a goldsmith, I may develop a liking to become a teacher, to become a priest, to become a trader. Is it a possibility? When I choose to do something differently, that's where the word varna, we know the word vara, it comes from the root var means to choose. Vara and kanya is the easy way to understand that word. So varna, somebody which somebody has chosen. So there is a freedom to choose and move and grow out. It is not going against the caste, but against the jati, but it is going for your heart's desire. And was there really a hierarchy among all these segments? So let me ask Dr. and Mrs. Hari to clarify the first myth that the caste system was rigid. Was the system followed in India really rigid, or was anything but rigid? Are there any living examples of people whom we know that moved from one to the other group of or lineage? So let me bring Dr. Hari and Mrs. Hari to share their view on that and see what they have to suggest.
Every Brahmana is the Moola mantra of every Brahmana. He was a Kshatriya, he was a king, but his mantra is the Mool mantra. That's how it is. And he wanted knowledge, so he gave his kingship to go to knowledge, because he realized kingship is transitory, momentary, but knowledge is permanence. That's what he went towards. Like that, every one of them you take, and he became a rishi to even Rama and Lakshmana. So that's why you keep migrating every one of them. So you take the case of Bhrigu, Bharadwaja, Atharvan, every one of them, Parasara, Vedavyasa himself, the greatest of the rishi, Muni Shrestha is what he's called. He's born to a fisherwoman. And he was accepted for his knowledge.
And so also, I would say Karna, brought up and raised in a Shudra family, and now rises to become the strongest of the warriors in his times there, isn't it?
Yes. Can I say something here, sir? Because this is an example often used by many people to say that the caste system was strong at that time and Karna was not allowed to take part in the competition and he was thrown out. And people who want to abuse it, use it. What they don't recognize is that competition was, yeah, he was a Kshatriya, right? He was born a Kshatriya, Karna. But the competition was not for a Jati Varna. That competition that was held only for the princes. And who was a non-prince was not allowed into it.
And that's how he was made a prince by Duryodhana at that time, so that he can fight.
He can participate.
Another misconception I had was that in general, by Brahmin word, we used to mean the one who does priesthood, primarily that function. Let's enlarge. I realized the Brahmin is a much more encompassing word. And then I realized when I was visiting Boston a few months ago, that there is something called Boston Brahmins also. So then I can comment it a bit, but then I got surprised what Brahmina really meant. So if you can enlarge on that, would help understand a little better.
See, Brahmins and priesthood interlinking is only recent because of lack of understanding. A Brahman is one who is interested in knowledge. Why do you give the name Brahman to him? The word BRH, Brah, means expanding, growing. That's why Mumbai is called Brihan Mumbai, the larger Mumbai.
Makes sense.
Ishvara is called Brihat Ishvara, the great Ishvara. So the word Brah means that which expands, that which grows. So knowledge grows. It's expanding. So that's where you get the word Brah from. That's why Brahma, he's the one who expands the universe, expanding universe. But for Brahma, the universe would be static, not expanding.
And there would be no space.
There's no space. He creates a space, the reservoir for Saras. Saraswati, his consort, spouse, to give the knowledge to us. So everything is so etymologically well kept, well set there properly for us to understand, if we care to understand.
So
similarly,
if I may say,
and
if I may say, and I know you were not, I do not know what Jati or Varna you were born, but both of you, by spending 25 years to accumulate and share the knowledge, become Brahmins irrespective. Do I understand that correct?
Absolutely. Yes, can I take?
But we have gone through our journey as well, making our choices too, because it's only in the last 20 years that we are in the phase where we are focusing on knowledge. But previous to that, we were working. I mean, I was in IT, he was in marketing. So we were actually we were in the field of service.
For somebody else.
Here is where I would just like to take a minute to highlight those four, the terms used for the four Varnas. You have Brahmana, you have Kshatriya, you have Vaishya, and you have Shudra. So let's start with Brahmana, like we just explained, Brahman. And mind you, these four terms are for professions. They are professions, they are vocations. When you are seeking knowledge for your own self, that is not a vocation. So that is different. And also Rishi, when you talk about a Rishi who sees nature at work, who is able to relate and resonate with the principles of sciences in the universe and in the cosmic relation that he's able to establish, he need not be a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya or Shudra. You don't have to straitjacket him into that. A Rishi is a Rishi who sees. He can be anybody. And he's not seeing out of vocation. So these four Varnas are mainly for vocation. And so the Brahmana, his vocation was, he was forced, I mean, his job was to preserve the Veda. And when you say to preserve the Veda, it means that Veda is not just preserved by chanting. Veda is also preserved by doing the rituals. There is the Karma Kanda, there is the Jnana Kanda. So even the rituals have to be done. And that is where the priesthood gets linked to. And the service that the Brahmana provided to the society around was to help people relate to nature through these rituals. So that was his vocation. And as a Kshatriya, yes, Kamleshji, I can see you raising your hand. Maybe I will just go through this flow.
I would suggest skipping the questions towards the end, if you can, please. It would help.
Yes. So, Kshatriya, the very word Ksha is to reduce. So, Kshatriya, his vocation or job mandate was to decimate enemies, decimate problems for the society, which is why he was in administration, governance, and that kind of a role. And Vaishya, not to be confused with Vaishya, which is the word for prostitution, where Vesh is to don a garb. So that is the word for a prostitute. This is Vaishya, which comes from vis. So Vaishya is one who spreads, who goes around, who travels, and therefore takes the produces around and trades. Then you come to the Shudra, which the category which is mandated to look after the production, the manufacturing for the entire society. So these are the 4 classifications, if you see. So manufacturing and services industry, as you would call it today, fundamentally, which forms the bulk of any society, any economy, any nation, that was the role played by the Shudra Varna. And therefore, if you see, well, the property was with these category of people, and they were actually in power. See, we forget, when we say Kshatriya and we see the king, we think that it is again a hereditary and so on. But fundamentally, there was also an aspect of democracy in it. So the power was with this Shudra classes who really held the wealth and the power, the voice of the civilization. The trader, again, he also was only in charge of creating the wealth of the society. He really did not own that wealth.
So let me put it this way. You rightly pointed out that these categories are needed for survival of almost any societies all over the world. Even in US, we see it at the moment that there are professionals, and then there are educators, and there are traders, and there are businessmen, and there are people who support the entire system in one or the other way with producing a variety of stuff. I know now the major producers are taking over, but those hierarchy, and it's not a hierarchy, it's a part of the base. You have very nicely pointed in one of your picture how the Vishnu has a head and the foot. If that is available quickly, would give us an idea. See, the major conception and major headache, and which is deeply rooted in all our mind, is that Shudra or Shudra.
Yes, we'll show you
the word
that.
Shudra has been connoted almost to mean a lowly person. And I know that many of my colleagues here would say, yes, that's what we have seen. But let us see in the reality what the word Shudra, if you can go in the depth of that, that would really, really help to set the stage for our second meeting later on.
Yes, sure. We'll take 2 things now, Dr. Saab. See, the vertical hierarchical thought comes from St. Thomas Aquinas of late 1200s. Whereas we show Vishnu both vertical as well as supine, horizontal. It's a fundamental difference. So,
and
you did not.
Interestingly, it is Lakshmi sitting at the feet of Vishnu. She sits at the feet, not at his head. And Lakshmi, who denotes all the wealth. And she is holding and massaging his feet.
So that is where it comes from. So she holds the wealth. We can show you that. But look at this. So the verticalness of the hierarchy is again a Western thought. Because when you have it supine like this, there's nothing one bigger than the other.
They're all equal. And the reason sometimes people say, oh, because the Shudra have been denoted. See, fundamentally, the aspect was, the idea was Brahmana is shown as the head of Vishnu, and Kshatriya as the head and mouth. Kshatriya is shown as the shoulder and the torso. Vaishya is shown as the thighs, and Shudra is shown as the feet. So many people have misconstrued this, saying that because the Shudra are shown at the feet, they were being trampled, the society was trampling upon them. But the picture, what it shows here is how is a society organized in terms of its people. And also it is shown as a pyramid, because sometimes you talk about it as a pyramid. That's because the base is where you have the strength, and that is where it is maximum. So the large number, the society was divided where even today, that is what you see in reality. Bulk of the people would be in the production and in the manufacturing and in services. Then as the next category of profession, you have fewer people in
Logistics.
commerce and logistics, further fewer in governance, and even further fewer in academics,
intellectuals.
So
see,
that is a normal distribution in a society, and the leg is what holds up the entire society.
Lakshmi
which is why the bulk of the population was shown as the feet on which the whole society stands. Without this, where is the society? There is nothing there, nothing to trade, nothing to protect. So that was the main role. Unfortunately, people don't see it like that, and they take these pictures, symbolic depictions, read it out of context, and therefore come to wrong conclusions. And also, some amount of information has been kept away from us through our course of studying the history of the civilization, wherein we don't get to the part which shows that the Shudra community held the wealth, and how was this wealth taken away from them. So that aspect has been glossed over in our teachings of history, and it has been wrongly conveyed that it is the upper caste which trampled upon the lower caste and kept them low. But it is on the contrary.
I frankly could not believe when I listened from you people that at some stage, or when the Britishers left, the Shudra princes were almost 50% of the Indian princes were Shudra. The majority of even in the king's courts, there would be a good representation of Shudra alongside Brahman and the Vaishya.
Absolutely.
This was totally new to me in that way, because the image goes the way we have understood and we have been sort of witnessed. And I think we will come in a second session how that image changed over a time to some extent. There is a truth to that image. But what is the reality, if you can bring it out, would help.
Sure. Here we are quoting from an official documented paper written by Dharampalji, the famous social historian and also personal assistant to Mahatma Gandhi. And this is the paper that he wrote. The details are here, and the paper date very clearly brings out majority of the Rajas of the 550 kingdoms who signed the document for joining India and gave it to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. All the Raja, out of the 550 Rajas, half of them belong to the Shudra Varna, as recently as 75 years ago. So this is a statement he made. On the face of it, he's a scholar. All his statements have been right till now because he observed and writes with facts. So what did we do? We went to we collected data for each princely state of India from A to Z and looked at who the kings were and where they belong. Each name of each state. We took up and then looked at which dynasty, which Jati Varna they belonged. That's what we done. Here's alphabet A. Then we went to alphabet B. Look at this. Then alphabet C. We collected all this and found it to be real. You can take alphabet J. You choose the alphabet, we'll tell you. So where they belong to. You take the alphabet S if you want. You choose the alphabet. So each, and look at this. One of the Raja of this particular kingdom was a Siddhi. Siddhi means he was a Negro from Africa. He was a king. So take any alphabet, I will show you. So that's how we have collected proof to say of the princely states as well as the Jagirs, who are the Thakurwadi, the Jagirs, all of them. Again, any alphabet, who belongs to which way collected.
Suggesting that Shudra in reality held the riches of India in that sense. They were the backbone in that sense there. Isn't it? Do I understand that correct?
Absolutely. And look at this comment here, who says, who travels through much of India. It is the Vallalars, who were the prosperous people. Yes, actually a particular comment by a German by name Ziegelbach. We'll show you. It is there in
I'll give you a break for in 1 minute while we are
Yes.
Yeah, because I need to have some
bringing
warm
it out.
water as
But
well,
I
please.
cannot imagine the amount of information that this couple single-handedly, well, four hands, but single-handedly have collected over the last 25
Beautiful.
years. And it is so easy to get this information if you attend the course at Hindu University of America, that it would make it really worthwhile. Obviously, their books are available online and Amazon has, and that if you just type autobiography of India, you'll be able to get all the list of the books. And I did only one called About the Society, where he describes all this Varna, Jati and all the parts. And I realized how much I didn't know. I mean, I may not be the most read person, but I know I have taken interest in understanding India, philosophy, being a physician, like to know more. So this was eye-opening to me that so much things are available. I know we may not be perfect, but I think this has made a big headway in our understanding of Indian background there. And then only we can answer questions by our youngsters, by foreign-born people, where we can tell them what this really was and why it changed. So over a time, we will be able to change that situation. Go ahead. And it's mind-boggling to me how much, I know I have prepared sometimes written papers for
So look at this.
medical aspects, and it takes so much time, energy to do this, and it has to have a really big mind to be able to handle all this information. Please go ahead. Now you already found it.
See, it's always we show Lakshmi, the divinity for wealth, at the feet of Vishnu. So who is there? The Shudra at the feet of Vishnu. So that is what she's minding, she's holding. So that this clearly shows the wealth is here and not the wealth is not at the head. Even though she's the heart of Vishnu, but she sits at the feet, not to massage his legs. Because that's what erroneously people are trying to show. But because the wealth is there, that's what it denotes. And if you look at this, let's take a few examples. This is an example by a person by name
Bartholomew Ziegenbach, and he's a German, and he tours South India, the Malabar region, and then he writes. He actually translates a Tamil text. It's called Ereru Pada, which is 70 verses in the honor of the plow. And so this is about farmers. And he says, even if one be born a Brahmin, the person is by no means considered to be of as great excellence as when born a Vallalar. So this is the farmer class. And here he says, neither the king's splendor nor the merchants nor the Brahmins is to be compared with the Vallalars' excellence and respect. Very clearly showing how this community was held. They grow crops to save people from famine. Without them, Brahmins cannot chant Vedas, kings can't rule as per Manusmriti, and poets can't sing Tamil poems. Learning to grow crops like Vallalars is greater than learning Vedas and learning Tamil to praise others. So here is where I would like to come back to a point. This is written by the famous poet Kambar, Tamil poet. Now here is where I would like to come back to a point where people say that a Shudra is said to be, at the lowest, and everybody else is twice born, and therefore they are higher. So that is yet another misconception that is there. Now, when you say twice born, look at this. A Vellalar, now the kind of work that is practiced by people in this vocation is something that is very basic, and coupled with the Jati system, these were skills that were learned within the family by observing your parents, by working alongside your parents. So these were skills and education that one got, life skills, that actually they were life skills that one just got on naturally in the family. Whereas if you had to trade and do commerce and economics, you have to actually learn navigation, you have to learn mathematics, you have to learn so many other things, the art of communication, verbal, and many other languages as well, to be able to talk to people in foreign tongues. So all of those are acquired skills. So for which you have to go through a phase of formal education. Likewise, if you have to be a Kshatriya and you have to go into war and defense and governance and all the rules about how to administer, you need another level of education. So it is like going into a professional course, or if you want to be a Brahmin, a practicing Brahmin, you have to sit and learn the Veda. These are not actually life skills. They are vocational skills, whereas what is with the Shudra are basic life skills, which is why Valmiki says everybody is born a Shudra and all the other Varna are Vija, where you have to undergo a very specialized formal education to be able to profess those vocations, which is very, very similar to what you have even today. Every child has to go through basic school education. After that, you can choose whether you want to go into a professional course or whether you want to just get into some kind of vocational course and continue with your vocation.
So while I understand that everybody is born Shudra, but if you have to categorize in general, to associate Shudra with some of the well-known communities is hard for me. So how would you associate? What are the major groups of people that you would consider? As I understand, the farmers or the people dealing with agriculture would belong to the Shudra class. What other groups you would put them?
Okay, I will just tell you one very touching example. Unfortunately, time is not going to permit us to show you the extent of contribution of this particular Shudra community today, who are categorized as scheduled castes today. This community is called the Odda. And I mean, it's a very, very moving story of what this community has had to suffer. Today, if Bharat is standing as a civilization, it has been a prosperous civilization for so many millennia, then everybody owes their gratitude to this Odda Jati, who have nurtured and taken care of every tiny water body of the civilization. They knew how to take care, nurture, maintain, and if it was not for this water, we would not have managed any of the things that we have done so far, and therefore have been successful. Two others. One other is the trading community. They are called by different names. The Odda community, they are called Odda, Oddan, Wadayar, in Oda in Gujarat, Jasma of Oda.
Yeah, Dr. Pankaj Bhai, you would have heard of Jasma of Odan.
Yes.
The famous story. Like that, the Mysore Maharaja kings are Odayars. Ud. Look at it, everywhere the word Ud comes. And I'm sure quite a few would have had Vodka, the famous Russian drink. That also comes from the same Ud, the word. Look at the word.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That is interesting.
Oh, obviously, Vodka. Look at the Ud stands for waters there. Ka is again waters, aqua. Both are Sanskrit words. So when you make two waters, two refined distilled waters, you get vodka. That's all.
Understandable.
Okay.
So this community, unfortunately, once the water management, the traditional way of managing waters was broken with the advent of the British, all of these people went jobless. I mean, our whole entire system, we have to study. You can really look at a beautiful integration into the vocations that were practiced and the way they were practiced and the rules that were therefore there in place.
So that is our talk for the next one, how the system got dismantled, literally from the so-called richest Shudra to the poorest Shudra. Kishorji, you did need a few minutes to please unmute yourself and to suggest what further we can move forward.
Yeah, Kalyanji, thank you very much. And Hariji and Hemaji, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. I'm doing the same course that Pankajji talked about, and it's excellent. I again appreciate very much Pankaj Bhai taking the lead to invite these great rishis, if you want to call them that, Dr. Hari and Hemaji. Will you want to take some questions? There are a lot of questions in the chat. Or?
I didn't see many, but yes, please feel free if anybody needs to unmute and ask also. But I didn't see any specific questions of late. The things have been understandable.
There's a lot of discussion rather than questions. I think, yes.
Yes, if somebody does have a question, feel free. You can have a short question.
I would like to mention that these lectures are recorded and uploaded on hsnconline.org on a page called KYD, Know Your Dharma. Now, this particular program recording started a few minutes later than from the beginning, unfortunately.
Hariji and Minaji, I had a quick question. My name is Ravi.
Sure.
And
if your video can be on, Ravi, that would help, but I understand. Go ahead.
yeah, Ji. Hariji and Minaji, did you come across this Sri Basaveshwara, who was the 12th century reformer who tried to sort of eradicate the Varna system and tried to educate the masses by simplifying all these Sanskrit verses and writing it in local language, and he tried to change the system?
Yes. We have great respect for Basaveshwara, Basavanna, as we call him affectionately. And see, yes, what he did is a tremendous work, grassroots work in Karnataka. Similar to his noble efforts, there were many similar noble people, same time, what you call a Samakala, or in different places at different times.
Sure.
So constantly there have been people. See, the one good thing is this land has been blessed with this. There have been constant great noble people like Basavanna, Basaveshwara, who have uplifted the society whenever it slipped and brought it back. Because for a society looking at it for 7,000, 8,000 years and more, and for a stretch from Afghanistan in the west to Burma in the east, from Ladakh and Tibet in the north to Sri Lanka in the south, it's a huge land, and local switching constantly keep happening. The good point is we have had continuous stream of social thinkers and leaders who have uplifted the land every time in different pockets it fell. That's the beauty of this land that we have had. So each one of them have contributed nobly. That has to be much respected, appreciated, and venerated stupendously, because but for all this continuous flow of social leaders, be it Shankar Dev in Assam, or be it Ramanujacharya in South, or 2,500 years back, Adi Shankara, who traveled all over India. So this uplifting the people at large has happened, has been a continuous effort across the times, across the land. That's the beauty of this civilization, because fundamentally the society gave that flexibility for upliftment. There was no stratification. That was that flexibility that Varna gave. They could all make this happen. Each one of them, and see this differentiation, slipping of one power over the other, be it knowledge being over the people who don't have knowledge, or money being over the people who don't have money, or the people who have arms with the people who don't have arms, or the people who have food to people who don't have food. This is a constant tussle, keeps on happening everywhere. That's a tug of war. And the tug of war started from the Hiranyagarbha, the Big Bang, in the cosmic egg between Indra and Vritra. That's ongoing, constant fight. From the moment of before the Big Bang to again Pralaya, it's going to be there. The tug of war continues, not just in sports that we had in the school, but all through life. But the good point is this civilization has continuously had people who have come up and looked after the people who are trodden upon and built back society, built back life. That is the speciality of the Dharma. That's our Sanatana Dharma.
And in a way, this HSNC initiative also, I would bracket it as one of those efforts for the present generation.
That's what I was going to tell. That we do want to continue that struggle.
What needs, people need to be reminded. People need to be reminded of the essence. See, it is very natural for it to slip away into stratification. So at that point in time, you need to remind people that it is not so, it is flexible. And the reason for the design, you have to remind people so that you can bring some semblance of optimization and higher productivity as the society, as an overall body.
Sure.
And I would suggest all, before joining with the next meeting, if you can look at this book, Autobiography India About Society by Bharat Gyan by Hariji, this would give you a lot of answers to the question that you are even better prepared next time. But somebody needed to ask question. Anandji, please go ahead. And
Namaskar, I have one question, Dr. Sahab.
Hanji.
Yes.
Can I ask a question now?
Yes, please.
It's for Dr. Pankaj to listen. Who will ask question? Because he is the moderator.
Let's go one at a time.
Pankaj Parikh.
Anandji, I think I told him first. Anandji, please go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for a great presentation. I have a specific question. You have given examples from Mahabharata. So in Mahabharata, Ghatotkacha had three sons, Barbarika, Meghavarman, and Ajnana Parvam. Two of them died in the war, but Meghavarnam was alive. So at the end of Mahabharata war, when the Pandavas and their children were killed, why did they go to Parikshit, who was third son's son, rather than not going to Meghavarnan, who was alive, who was Ghatotkacha's son, in relation to the today's seminar about Jati and Varna?
One point. Ghatotkacha was a Rakshasa. He was not of the Manava variety. He was a Rakshasa. That's why when Sahadeva and Ghatotkacha go to Ramasetu during the Vanvas, Ghatotkacha says, let me go across the Ramasetu bridge. Because Sahadeva stays back in Rameshwaram. Ghatotkacha says, let me go meet my cousins and come.
And one other thing, all this Jati Varna system fundamentally is for people who were living in towns and cities and
Nagaravasi.
villages as Nagaravasi. It was never for Vanavasi.
And I did not
Even-
bring out
even-
that aspect
yes.
today because I think there is so much more to cover, will get lost. Let me ask second question. Karthik ji, you have a quick question, please?
Yeah, I have a quick question in the sense that Prime Minister Modi also will like to get rid of the caste system. So at the practical level, what government can
Karthik ji, we are coming to that question answer. What lies ahead and where we are in the next session, if that's okay with you. Don't worry, your question would be answered. Ramesh ji, you had a quick question. Ramesh ji, if you unmute, please.
Earlier during the
Kamesh is being
presentation, I think Hariji talked about, when they talk about Varna, it was both profession and color. I understand the profession part of it. I could not correlate Varna with color. Could you expand on that?
Hari ji, go
Yes.
ahead, please.
Yes. See, fundamentally, the aspect comes from choice. Color, you have a myriad of colors and you choose a color. Colors come with an implicit notion of choosing a color. One. Second, it is also something that distinguishes. So Varna in a way also distinguishes, it also categorizes, it also groups. So we spoke, I mean, in the beginning, I spoke about how aggregation or grouping together. So from that perspective also, when you say a color, it means there is a group, it's a band of a particular shade. So that again comes in. Therefore, you use the aspect of color and Varna.
But Hema ji, what he's asking
in a-
is that Varna is not like a doctor would not be necessarily of a white color or a black color. That's what he's pointing at. Is that
Oh, no, not skin color. Oh, no, not skin color.
Ramesh ji,
Is
did
that
I
what
ask
you're
you
saying?
correctly?
Is
Well,
that what you're
that I was driving towards that. The whole notion about the color, because that gets into the, in Western philosophy or anywhere else, that gets into
Right.
the race.
race?
Because
Yes.
if you look at the groupism, the entire world gets divided into 3 or 4 different skin colors.
Right.
Black, yellow, brown, white,
Right,
kind
right,
of
right.
thing, right? And
Uh,
so it becomes very confusing when we start relating Varna with color. My humble request would be Varna is to be defined as, professions and group of professions. And if we leave it at that, I think that would be a lot more digestible.
Ramesh ji,
Ramesh, I'll just check. Can I respond to that if you don't mind,
Please.
Dr.
Hari
Parekh?
ji, please.
See, color is by choice. That's one. The second point is, see, color, black is not a bad color in Hindu thought or Dharmic thought. Krishna is black, Draupadi is black, Vedavyasa is black, or many people are black. So black, whereas you look at the painting that I showed
That
you,
also
first
may be the Western
presentation,
influence that all white is good.
all is fair. You have a black buck, you have a black sheep, or you have everybody is fair and you whitewash it. So look, see, it's a very Anglican thought, very colonial European thought. Let's be clear. Black is not bad in India. All the Shalagrama is black. Rudraksha is dark. So black is accepted noble color. Megha Shyama, the dark hued clouds or bring in water. So black is not bad. It's a very Victorian concept of imposing on India. Okay.
I totally understand that. All I was trying to say was
we
trying
get
to
your
relate
point. Yes,
Varna
we
and
got
color
your point.
together. That
Right,
grouping
right.
that
Yes.
together is the one
Rameshji, let's have some
that
more
sort of
questions.
bothered me.
Dr. Parekh, I think Mr. Kamlesh Vyas has been waiting to
Yes,
ask. If you
I
could-
know. I don't know why. Go ahead, Kamlesh.
नमस्कार हरि भाई एंड हेमा बेन, नमस्कार आपको, और डॉक्टर परीख आपको भी बहुत बहुत नमस्कार. As per our Srimad Bhagavad Gita, there is in 18th chapter there is 41 verse is according to the Brahman, all the jati, all the varna divided according to the quality of the born of their respective and nature.
Chaturvarna
So-
Maya Srushti. That is what the shloka you're referring to, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
See,
Brahmana-
Jati is
verse is that Brahmana Kshatriya Visha Sudranancha Parantapah Karmani Praviktani Swabhava Prabhaver Gune. So there is Vibhaktani, that means it is divided.
Divided.
With Swabhav, that means what I understanding is that Swabhav is nature, and Gun, that means quality. So it is. Can you explain about me? What is that?
Well,
okay. Good. So it is. If I may say, Dr. Saab, if I
Haji.
may, see, it is as you exactly use the right words. It's all about attitude, aptitude, your acts, your karma, that you group yourself into one of the four. But birth is janam. It's two different things. So these four divisions are very clearly by your attitude, aptitude, your skills, your knowledge, where you want to place yourself. This is very clear.
And therefore, it is by your choice. So you decide if your aptitude is towards one particular varna, you choose and seek to go into that varna.
and
So
I'll take
it
exa-
is,
that is where
it is by
parents
your-
make a mistake when they try to impose upon or expect the children to do something what is not in their innate nature. The hardest
Yes.
task for the parents and for a guru would be to see what lies within this child, what is his aptitude. And to
absolutely.
be frank with you, the word shishya comes from something which is drawn from, like from the well when we bring out. So that shishyatva is bringing out the best from the person, which you allow it to flower, not impose. You can't impose a rose flower on a gardenia. Gardenia would give only gardenia. So the best for individual lies in flowering to his own potential rather than just because of that. Let me start ending this really nice long discussion on caste system. I think we have done excellent from covering the beginning of the portion to give an introduction to understand what the caste system is and what lies ahead of us. I know this is not the completion of the talk. A lot of questions still remain and a lot of attendees do have more questions, and we are going to present the remaining portion at the subsequent talk. What made the valleys along the journey of Indian civilization where caste system intensified further and created a problem? What were the factors contributing to it? And what has happened since independence and what lies ahead of us? So a lot more to come. I really appreciate Hindu Society of North Carolina bringing out this particular talk on decasting the caste system. My special thanks to Mr. Kirit Trivedi, Mr. Sajan Agrawal, Manoj Pandya, and Parag Dige for their support and genuine help in this presentation. Again, myself, Dr. Pankaj Parikh, finishing our first talk on decasting the caste system. Thanks all for attending, and we'll meet soon back again on the same talk. Thank you.